you all introduce yourself, and whenever you're ready, if you got a screen to share, you can do that too.
Sounds good. Yes, thank you so much for having us today. We're very excited to be here. My name is Constance Taylor. I'm one of the conservation specialists with the California Invasive Plant Council. I've been with Cal IPC for about 2 years at this point, and I focus on creating training programs for Cal IPC. So managing, creating, finding funding for trainings, in addition to all kinds of other little bits and bobs that you always need to do in a small nonprofit. And I'll pass it along to Jutta.
All right, thanks, Constance. So I'm Jutta Burger. I'm Science Program Director at the California Invasive Plant Council. I've been here for about 5 years, been in the Bay Area for about 5 years as well. So getting to really, really love it up here. And I'm responsible for kind of overseeing our science and conservation programs and the inventory as well, working on best management practices. And again, as Constance says, all those other many things, including our symposium that we do every year, all the time. All right, passing it back to you.
Great, thank you. So today we're covering invasive plant management, tips and tools for everyday use, and we're hoping that we're going to give you some very practical tools and resources to use when you're out there trying to either do volunteer projects or figure out what to do in your backyard or whatever your plan for the invasive plants in your life is. And I put a link in the chat, and maybe somebody can reshare it. But this is a PDF document with lots of clickable links, and we're going over all of those resources and then some, I think, in this presentation. But the ones in the PDF are the major ones, so you can download that and have it for your own resource, so you don't need to frantically be writing down URLs or anything like that. And of course, here are our emails. Feel free to get in touch at any point, and I'll also have the emails up at the end of the presentation. So for today, we have a whirlwind of information for you today. So we're going to be going over who Cal IPC is, as well as a quick definition of terms that we're going to be using throughout the presentation, how invasive plants are managed on a state level, EDRR, meaning early detection, rapid response, what it is and how CNPS chapters like Yerba Buena can help, tools and resources on the Cal IPC website, and then some final thoughts. And please feel free to ask questions at any point. You can raise your hand, or Jutta's going to be monitoring the chat as well. So if we don't get to your question during the presentation, we'll get to it at the end. So who is Cal IPC? We are a nonprofit, and we are established in 1992, and we are a statewide organization. However, we are a very small nonprofit. We've got 6 full-time staff and 3 part-time employees, and we work on invasive plant issues throughout California. So as you can imagine, we stay very, very busy. And the mission of Cal IPC is to protect California's lands and waters from ecologically damaging invasive plants through science, education, and policy. And we primarily focus on wildland weed management, not agricultural weed management, which is a very different beast. So we're not literally out in the world removing the weeds ourselves. What our organization does is we help grease the wheels and smooth the path for all kinds of other organizations around the state to do this type of on-the-ground work. And the ways that we do that is we coordinate regional partnerships. So as we all know, weeds do not recognize county lines. So it's really important that people work together to manage these areas or the invasive species in different areas. We help land managers prioritize resources for species management. So there we are all painfully aware, I'm sure, that there's always limited time, limited money, limited personnel. So given this, it's really important to think about what species you want to focus on as a land manager to make sure that your resources get the most bang for their buck, maximum benefits to the ecosystems that you're working in. And Cal Weed Mapper is a great tool to use for that, and we're definitely going to be going over that in the presentation. We design science-based tools and projects to help remove invasive plants. And the tools and projects are going to be some of the main things that we're going over today. We advocate for sound public policy and funding. A lot of the money that restoration projects get come from federal and state funding, which means that this funding is competing often, but not always, with every other possible priority in the state. So we work with policymakers in Sacramento and beyond to make sure that our elected representatives really understand the importance of invasive species management to ecosystem health as well as human health. And we also train volunteers and professional land stewards. So trainings can look a lot like what we're doing today. They can also be more ongoing and hands-on trainings. And of course, as you mentioned, we also have our annual symposium. So of course, we have to do a quick plug for that, as well as thank you all. Thank you, Yerba Buena CNPS, for being symposium sponsors this year. So we really hope that you can come and join us. The main symposium is October 23rd to the 25th. It's all online. And so the theme is getting ahead of the invasion curve. So essentially focusing efforts on the early stages of invasion, which is actually a lot of what we're going to be covering today. So this means employing prevention strategies as well as early detection, rapid response, which are, EDRR is something that is conceptually simple, but can be far more complex in practice. And so speakers are going to share their work at the local, regional, and statewide levels. In addition to our online symposium, we are also having 2 in-person workshops, one in Southern California at Cal Poly Pomona on October 1st, and one at CSU East Bay in Concord on November 15th. And so these are going to be, we're kind of trying to make the content the same in Northern and Southern, so people don't feel like they're missing out or feel like they have to go to both. So in both the workshops, we're going to be covering tools and techniques, restoration practices, managing volunteer programs, equity and field safety, and controlling regional target weeds. So really hope that you can join us for one of these things this year. So how are Cal IPC and CNPS connected? Well, the main thing is we share a larger mission to protect native environments. We also definitely reach out to CNPS all the time for various things. We also point the public to CNPS as a resource for using native plants when they want to garden, or we point people to CNPS chapters if they want to get involved with local volunteer opportunities. CNPS chapters are key for being eyes on the ground when it comes to finding, identifying, and reporting new populations or sightings of invasive plants. And also, CNPS chapters are often the ones doing the local work parties that actually get the things done. So thank you so much for being out there doing what you do. It's really important, as you all already know. And we also talk to CNPS all the time about new threats and issues, especially now with the newly formed CNPS Invasive Plant Committee. And Jutta has more involvement in that. And so Jutta can talk a little bit more about that either now or later in the presentation. Did you want to say a word or two about the committee, Jutta?
I could. I had not planned on it, but I could. Yes, indeed.
Surprise!
Well, I think it'd be great to add questions in the chat about that if you all do have questions, and then I can answer them to the best of my ability. And maybe someone in the audience is also involved. I'm not sure.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. So as we continue in this next 40 minutes or so, I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page as far as how Cal IPC defines these terms. So invasive plant. What is an invasive plant? This picture here is of some English ivy climbing up some trees. So invasive plants quickly reproduce and spread. They change habitats, which in turn can do things like reduce biodiversity and cause extinctions. Invasive plants can also increase fire hazards because they can grow really quickly and create lots and lots of fuel. And Cal IPC defines invasive plants as non-native and introduced, and as well as being invasive. Which begs the question, what do we mean by non-native and introduced? Well, here we go. Like this rosemary in the picture here for introduced plants are brought into an area through human activity, and they are not always invasive. For example, you don't see fields of rosemary when you go out into the wild. They kind of tend to stay where they're planted. And introduced is kind of a synonym for non-native. It just means the opposite of a native plant, and it's not from the place where it's been brought into. Native plants like this oak tree in the picture have evolved in an area over a long period of time and generally have many relationships with the ecosystems that they live in, with the animals and the fungus and the bacteria. And in California, native generally refers to plants and animals that were here before European arrival, before the 1500s-ish or so. And then what is a weed? A weed is just a plant out of place. It can be native, it can be introduced. It's just a plant where we don't really want that particular plant. So how are invasive plants managed on a statewide level? There's three main structures in place. We've got the California Department of Food and Agriculture. We have the weed management areas, or WMAs, and then there's Cal IPC. I'm going to dig into these three a little bit more. So CDFA, what do? They focus on preventing or restricting the movement of pests and pathogens that affect commercial agriculture. So prevention is a really big thing for CDFA. A primary mandate of CDFA is to protect against invasion of exotic pests and diseases. And they're fairly flexible. When they get a call about something like a new pest that somebody is reporting, they'll try to reduce the flow of it through commerce. And so that can be through checkpoints. You might have driven through one of them at the California border. So what they're looking for at the checkpoints are pathogens. They're looking for fruit, other live materials. They're looking for items that have a quarantine. Citrus is a big one. You usually can't bring it into the state. It'll likely be confiscated. And what they're looking for depends on what and where the most recent pest is. And CDFA is involved in a whole host of other programs to increase education and awareness around invasive species, not just plants, but really any type of organism. You might have seen the Buy It Where You Burn It campaign for firewood. So that's a big one that they do as well. Unfortunately, with all of this prevention, there is not much enforcement, and a lot of the action taken is voluntary. For example, Buy It Where You Burn It. It is not illegal to move firewood from one state to another or from Northern California to Southern California. So, that it is a voluntary action to not move firewood, and CDFA is doing the best they can to educate people so they can make a good choice around that. Again, invasive ornamentals is another great example. Lots of ornamentals that are highly invasive in wildlands are still sold in nurseries. So unfortunately, that is an issue as well. And private land can be a really big challenge as well. There's not currently a mandate to, have private landowners remove noxious weeds from their properties. One of the things that CDFA can do is provide local and regional funding if there is a need for action. And they also have a pest hotline so the public can report things. And you can also call your local agricultural commissioner. And we're going to check out the encyclopedia on the CDFA website in a second, but the pest hotline phone number is plastered all over the CDFA website. It's one of the first things you see. So I just wanted to show you this real quick. The encyclopedia is on that PDF that we put in the chat. So look at that, the pest hotline right there. And the encyclopedia is primarily focused on weeds that are agricultural risks. So let's see, we're going to go here and we're going to look at the California noxious weed list. So if you're, not seeing something on here that is invasive in wildlands, it is likely because it is not necessarily invasive in an agricultural setting. So here we go. These are some things to keep a lookout for. You want to pay attention to the A, B, and C ratings. Those are the ones to focus, and I'll talk about what those mean in just one second. So here you go. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You can just see A, B, C, etc. And I'm going to head back here. So what exactly do those A, B, and C ratings mean? You can scroll, and go to here, weed rating definitions. It's on that same encyclopedia page. And then it'll tell you right here, what does A mean? A is a pest of known economic or environmental detriment and is either not known to be established in California or present in limited distribution, etc. And then B and C are up down there as well. So that's a great resource just to get started. And let's see if I can Get that back to full screen. Okay. So WMAs, or the weed management areas. So these are statewide, but they are county-based. And so all the WMAs are, have a pretty high level of autonomy. They are periodically funded by the state through CDFA. And one of the challenges of WMAs today was that this whole program was defunded for about a decade. And they did start getting some funding around 2020, but there has been some challenges getting the funding out to the different WMAs. The WMAs are made up of various stakeholders. So they're all focused on invasive plant control. It can be private, county, state, federal, nonprofit. CNPS chapters are definitely involved in WMAs all over the state as well. And WMAs are great because it kind of gets everybody pointed in the same direction to have a really great focused regional response on any problem weeds that you're trying to eradicate or keep an eye on. And there is an annual statewide meeting of all the WMAs that Cal IPC hosts every year, usually as part of the symposium. This year, it's going to be October 23rd, 8:30 to 10:30 as part of the online symposium. And so just real quick, how do you find these WMAs? They are on the Cal IPC webpage. This is kind of some one-stop shopping. You can head down here. You will see the San Francisco WMA. You can get some contact information, any other information here, and then some project highlights that the WMA has worked on. And then finally, we have Cal IPC. So we act as a statewide hub, and we connect people concerned about invasive plants to each other. So people can share resources, knowledge, etc. We fill in gaps by providing risk and invasiveness ratings for introduced plants in natural areas. And that's primarily through our plant inventory, which I'll be going over in just a moment. And so we provide lots and lots of information on management in natural areas, including resources that can help managers prioritize plants with limited time and resources, like we discussed. And we've got the plant inventory. So this is the go-to list for park managers. And for each species listed on the inventory, there are resources linked to natural history, reference scientific articles, weed management techniques. And one of the great things as well is it's very transparent. You can see the full assessment of how this plant got the rating it did, who did the assessment, when it was done, when or if it's been updated. So again, we'll talk about that in just a second. And we also develop best management practices for weed control for both non-chemical and chemical techniques. All right, so I'm going to hop over to the website in just a minute. And when we're there, we're going to talk about the Cal IPC library, the plant inventory, weed cut, Cal weed mapper, and the regional invasive plant EDRR targets. And these are also references that are on that PDF document. Huh? It's going to work? Aha, here we go. All righty, so first, the library. First stop. Publication and video library. Just wanted to show folks a couple cool things. Got a great video library. If you go to training videos, we have videos of all of our past symposiums since 2020 when we first started doing them online. And there's tons of topics down here. Prevention, lots of videos from the National Park Service training. If you want to brush up on your thistles of the Bay Area, there's a whole little series there. As well as some techniques. There's videos about mechanical control, non-chem weed control, herbicide control. So lots of great information there. If you are more of a I want to read it type of person, we have you covered. We've got our publications. If you go here, you will see the BMPs, which means best management practices for non-chemical weed control. This is a really great one because it doesn't get species specific, but it does really go into non-chemical techniques, what they're good for, how they're used. It's kind of a one-stop shop for all your non-chemical techniques. So 21 commonly used non-chemical techniques. So that means things like mowing, flaming, tarping, hoeing, etc. And this is available as a free PDF download. So you can get that right now if you want to for some nighttime reading over the weekend. And there's also another really great publication that, excuse me, is unfortunately not available as a downloadable PDF, but that doesn't mean it's not available online. So we're going to go to the weed control for natural areas. So this is a great book. This is species specific. And so it has most of the species that people are interested in controlling, control methods for 340 species. And it's also got non-chemical and chemical control options for all of those species. So the information in this book is actually on the website for each of the individual plants in the plant inventory. And I'll show you where that is in a moment, but it is embedded in the website for the plants on the inventory. So it's there if you want it, but if you are a type of person who wants a physical book, it is also available through the website as well. Ooh, excuse me. All right, and next it is time for the inventory. Ooh, sorry, dry throat. I know there's a lot of information that I'm throwing at you all, so please feel free to ask questions or get in touch with us later as well. So we've got here is how you get to the inventory. There are 3 different lists: plants A to Z, plants in horticulture, and the Cal IPC inventory. Cal IPC inventory and plants A to Z are the exact same list. The only difference is that plants A to Z is listed with thumbnail photos of the species. The Cal IPC inventory is text only as far as the initial page you get to. Also, plants A to Z loads a lot faster as a page than the Cal IPC inventory. So I've actually pre-pulled up the inventory because it takes a minute to load. So I'll show you this. This is what it looks like here. And you can look up whatever plant it is you are trying to get to. If you are in a hurry and you don't have time to wait for something to load, you can go to plants A to Z. Whoopsie. And it loads pretty darn quickly. So if you are looking for a plant, say spotted knapweed, which Jutta's going to talk about in just a moment, you can look up spotted knapweed. There we go. All right. So spotted knapweed on our inventory. What happens if we click on it? This is the landing page. So all the plants on the inventory, you're going to see something like this. You'll have the various synonyms, common name, a little bit of natural history. And this is where you'll start seeing the different forms. So here's the assessment. This is where you can see all of the nitty-gritty of why it was put on the inventory. So you've got the evaluators here. You have all the different criteria that it was scored on. And a really, really helpful thing to know about is here are all of the scientific resources cited that were reviewed to make the rating what it was. So that's a great resource if you're looking for more info on a particular plant. Here we've got species ID cards for lots of species. If you're doing a volunteer day, this can be a great thing to print out. So you got some little pocket facts for your volunteers. And weed management notes. This is where you're going to see the information from the Weed Control for Natural Areas book. And this is a really fantastic resource. It's got kind of a quick overview, as well as some more natural history and behavior. And here it goes into a lot of detail as far as non-chemical control and chemical control for all the various plants. And so I should also mention that when we're talking about the inventory, the plants are evaluated only if they may invade or are invading California wildlands and areas with native habitat values. So the inventory does not include plants that are only found in areas of human-caused disturbance, like urban areas or roadsides, cultivated agricultural field, etc. Okay, so the next resource that I'm going to move on to is Weed Cut. That is under resources. Whoopsie, hello, weed cut. All right. And this stands for Weed Control User Tool. And this is a fantastic decision support tool that you can use if you are trying to control a certain plant and your site has some kind of distinct characteristics. Maybe it's really rocky, maybe it's on a slope. This is a way that you can filter down to see what techniques would be good for the plant that you are trying to control. And currently, excuse me, currently this is only for non-chemical techniques, but we are going to be adding chemical techniques in very soon. Probably by the end of this year, it should be fully ready to go by early next year. So here, for example, all these little thumbnails are different control techniques that are on the offer, and then the herbicides will be added to these once we get them in. And here is what the filter looks like. So you have all of these different characteristics for whatever plant you're trying to control. And then you have the site characteristics as well. So just as a quick example, maybe we have an annual grass. Maybe we don't know a whole lot about our plant. And then maybe we've got, annual grasses on the roadside that we're trying to control, for example. And so this is just going to give you what might work the best and what might work the worst. So here you've got the excellent results, and then you can click on any of these to learn more about those techniques, good results down to fair and poor or ineffective results. So what do these things look like? Let's take a look at grubbing. Why not? So for all of these techniques, you're going to get this information up top. You'll get little thumbnails here. What's grubbing going to work on? How selective is it for your target plant? How much does it cost in acres per year? What's the fire risk? What's the safety risk? What's the cultural resource risk? What's the environmental hazard? And if you want to learn more about any of these characteristics, then it's all down here. And you can click on any of these things as well. This is just the index for all of this information here. So really handy if you are looking for an easy guide to different weed control techniques. And Weed Cut is essentially a tool to help guide people in the integrated pest management process. And we're adding in chemical techniques because we want to be sure to provide a full plant management tool packet. So whatever is going to work best for the situation at hand. And then finally, we have Cal Weed Mapper. And this is a pretty cool tool. This is where you can see plants that have been mapped around the state, and you can filter by region type. You can filter by species. You can filter by a number of different types of things. And all of the records that are in Cal Weed Mapper come from Cal Flora, INAT, herbarium records. Those are the three main sources. So let's say, since we've been talking about weed management areas, look at this. Weed management areas, and then we're going to look up, whoopsie, help if I could type this correctly, San Francisco WMA. Great. So here's the outline of the WMA area. And you can see here, there's a number of different plants that are listed. So 57 species for surveillance, etc. And you can get the entire report for the region as well if you just click on this PDF link or the Excel link. What does surveillance mean? Surveillance entails regular surveys to detect new infestations of species not known to be present in a region. So this can be a great place to look for different plants. What should folks be keeping their eyes out for? And you can look here, 57 species. So if we want to see where alligator weed has been spotted, it's going to zoom out a little bit. Here we go. Here is where alligator weed has been spotted. It has not yet been spotted in San Francisco. And what on earth do these little symbols mean? Click on layers, and this will give you the legend. So it looks like for all of these, the presence needs to be verified and the species needs to be verified. And you can do that for all of the species listed here. And there's various ratings as well. So high are the ones to look out for, because those are the ones that have not yet made it to the weed management area yet. So this is a really fantastic way to get an idea of what you have locally or what weeds you might want to be careful of that are close by. And you can also filter by county as well as the WMA. You just go here and hit county instead. There's also ecoregions, Jepson regions, etc. And so we really encourage people to enter weed observations and identifications through INAT and Cal Flora, because that's where a lot of this information comes from. And without knowing the general distribution of weeds, we cannot do very much to manage them. So that brings me to the topic of EDRR. I know you were all just waiting for me to get to this topic. So what is EDRR? It means early detection and rapid response. And specifically, that means a strategy that focuses on finding and removing new invasive species before they can establish and spread. And this really relies very heavily on people being able to identify these new species and respond quickly. And one of our colleagues at Cal IPC, Claire, brings up a great example of EDRR. During the pandemic, you might remember that there was a kerfuffle around murder hornets that were showing up in like the Northwest, right? And we don't really hear about murder hornets anymore. And why is that? That's because that was a great example of early detection and rapid response. People heard about them, they were able to identify them, they were able to react very quickly. So now we do not have this infestation of non-native hornets that are causing major problems for humans and otherwise. So Jutta is going to talk a little bit more about some species to keep an eye out, as well as some other things.
Thanks, Constance. Well, you covered almost everything, so that's great. But I think it's a great segue into just focusing a little bit more on that question, the nagging question that we seem to get from a lot of people of this, my gosh, there's so many weeds out there. What do we focus on? You know, what are the worst weeds, for instance, in the San Francisco area, in the county, in the city? Well, that is a more difficult question to answer. It's a little bit like asking somebody from the Native Plant Society, you know, what are the native plant species that you want to keep, you know? So it's really complex because it depends on exactly where you are. And Constance showed that, you know, you can go by region and, you know, your answer is going to be different of depending on the distribution of the invasive plants in that region, the amount of data available. It also depends on how much of that species is out there. We had a question in the Q&A about Urospermum picroides, and like that it's getting highly abundant. The abundance of a plant might really dictate whether you can take care of that or not with the resources that you have. And then lastly, of course, well, two other things. It depends on what other species are out there, what native species are around that plant, and then lastly, and what are your goals for that site? Are you trying to protect those species? Or are you just trying to get rid of the invasive plant? And lastly, it also depends on the kind of resources that you have available to remove them. So one place to look for priority invasive plants is Cal Weed Mapper, as Constance just showed. It's a great resource that gives you a first cut. Now you can always find like, wait a minute, this isn't quite accurate, or, you know, issues like that, but it gives you that first cut that you can kind of react against. And it is based on, you know, the statewide survey that was done several years ago, as well as current Cal Flora research grade iNaturalist records and herbarium specimens. So, you know, we find it very helpful as a guide for somebody regionally or locally. And then it also gives you those management recommendations, as you saw Constance mentioned. Another place, a good place to look to go for EDRR species is a document that you can find in that PDF that Constance shared, and then I reshared at the beginning of the talk here, which was what's it called? The document, the regional invasive plant EDRR targets. And this right here is a slide is the first page of that targets page. So this is the result of a joint effort of CDFA and Cal IPC that was led by Nikki Valentine and Doug Johnson with the attempt to, with the goal of trying to identify shared priorities across different groups in the different regions across the state. So it shows you here on the first page, EDRR targets by regions, with the 9-county Bay Area is one of those regions. And within the Bay Area, you can see top line there are 17 EDRR targets. Now, that does not mean that there are 17 weeds that are important in the San Francisco area. Not at all. It means that there are 17 species that are not very common in the county that local WMAs and in the Bay Area and the agricultural commissioners in the Bay Area are either one or both of those groups are prioritizing. So that's kind of important to know. You've got more resources that are going after these plants. They're also being prioritized because they're not all that common yet. And so we can view that early detection, rapid response. So maybe next slide, please, then, Constance. All right. So I'm just going to cherry pick 3 of those species out of that list of 17. I would recommend you go look at the list of 17 because maybe these are the, tomorrow's worst weeds. These are things that, again, are not very common in the county yet. So here, the first species that I'm going to talk about is one that maybe you haven't heard of at all. That is called stinknet, Oncocyphon pilulifera. And Oncocyphon pilulifera is one of those fun little annual asters. It flowers in late summer. It's marching its way up from Southern California. It's a native to South Africa. And it was found by Jennifer Moe in Santa Clara County in 2020. Bad sign. First occurrence in the San Francisco Bay Area. That's what makes it an early detection rapid response species. We don't have any records yet in San Francisco County, but we would like, and I'm sure you would like also, to catch this stuff early. I'm coming from Southern California. I can tell you there are fields of that stuff, and it is a flammable, it is aggressive, and it has really done a number on some habitats down there. So that's the one species. So again, no record yet, but you could be the first in San Francisco County. The next one is spotted knapweed. So Constance mentioned some already highlighted spotted knapweed, so gave you a little bit of an introduction to it. It's another Cal IPC high rated species. It's a short-lived perennial, and it is native to the eastern part of Europe. So this one, it isn't coming down from the south, it's coming up from the south, it's coming down from the north. So it's already very common in Washington. It's already very common in Oregon, and very problematic in those areas, especially in grasslands. It is pretty common in some of our northern counties. Now in the Bay Area, it has been prioritized because it is only in a handful of counties in the Bay Area and only in a few occurrences. So those counties are San Mateo County, Santa Clara County, Alameda County, Napa County, and Sonoma County. So not yet San Francisco, but again, you could be the first. That's also why this is a priority to look for. Again, priorities for early detection, rapid response. The third species is Japanese knotweed. Japanese knotweed is a large perennial, a honkin' big perennial. This is a Cal IPC moderate level inventory species, and with an alert status. And whenever we have an alert status, that means it's spreading especially rapidly. So this does not come from the north. It does not come from the south. It comes from horticulture. So that's just great. It's popping from its gardens out into the wildland area. So we don't know where it's going to come next, but guess what? San Francisco will be a nice big urban hub. It's got a population, and actually 2, as far as I can tell, in the city itself. One of them is in the western part of the Presidio, and another one is nestled in further into in San Francisco. So That is a difficult species, a very difficult species to control. So nabbing it early and really managing it is intensely is very important. Marin County there are a lot of people working on it in Marin County, and they have they're great experts and resources to go to if you do want to get to controlling this. So that now we could go to the next slide. All right, so how to track those new species, how to do what to do about a new find. So you can, and I'm only really going to quickly go through this. You can keep records in CalFlora. CalFlora is an app, kind of like iNaturalist. It's an online database, but it's specific for California. And here's the logo for it, I think, too. CalFlora. See. And you can download an app on your cell phone. You can take records of populations, and it's a very easy way to see what the distribution of a particular plant is, sort of vetted occurrences of a particular plant, like the ones I mentioned, in the state or in any county or in an area that you designate. And you can enter data very easily into that application. And it's then viewable to land managers who are increasingly using this application, and to lay peoples, which is wonderful. You can also do things like history stacking. So if you adopt that particular Japanese knotweed population, you can go back year after year and tell agencies, guess what? It's growing, do something about it. Or you can be controlling a population, and you can track how you're reducing the population size. So you can also mark it as being managed. When you mark it as being managed, it can go into Cal Weed Mapper and show up as being managed rather than we don't know about it, you know. So that's very helpful. And again, those data feed directly into Cal Weed Mapper. And I think we have a lot of good training material for EDRR mapping. And go to that website that we have listed at the bottom of the slide. Next slide, please. So, you know, okay, I was telling you about those 17 species in San Francisco County that are high priority because either the agricultural commissioners or the weed management areas are prioritizing them. Yeah, and that's great, and everybody was excited about that, but unfortunately it is very difficult to really you know, even follow through on uncommon species, just because resources are limited, and you know, it's hard maybe to coordinate with the right people to get to those right locations. So this graph here is showing, it's a little complicated to look at, but most importantly, you want to just look at the bars with the axis on the left side of the graph are by county. What is the percentage of the number of those high priority species that is being visited, that was visited in 2023? So unfortunately, we don't have 100 at the top of that graph. We have 30%. So people are not getting to visiting these high priority populations. And that's why we really are emphasizing, like, don't forget those early detection species and working on those. And the dots are the total number of existing populations. So you can see Marin County was the highest percentage of populations that were visited of its high priority species. San Francisco is visiting more than many others. The county that I live in, Contra Costa, we are at the bottom of the pile. We are not visiting any of our high priority species. So maybe I don't have the time to go out there, but it just makes me uncomfortable and feel a little guilty too. So I think that's it for this one. I think it goes back to you then, right? Yes.
All right, sorry about that. I was not able to find the little audio on button. So other useful resources. Yes, thank you, Jutta. That was great. Other useful resources. These, again, are all on the resource sheet. So CalFlora and INAT are two fantastic places to record your observations, to get more information about these plants, to ID plants if you are uncertain about what you're looking at. As far as another resource for IDing goes, there is a California Invasive Plants Facebook page run by Barbara Cossey. Some of you may or may not know her, but this is a very, very active group. There's about 20,000 people on there. And if you have questions about species management or a species ID, this is a place where you can get some crowdsourced information, and people are usually pretty on the ball about, if you're asking about species management, people will try to help you out. There's also the UC Master Gardeners group as far as a entity that does a lot of public outreach. We just wanted to make sure that everybody in this presentation also knows about UC Master Gardeners if you don't already. They're primarily, again, more in gardening, as you might imagine, but they're also constantly out there doing public outreach about invasive species, how to prevent introductions of invasive species into wildlands and things like that, like talking about site hygiene. So this is another really fantastic organization to know about if you don't already. PlantRight is another great organization. They focus a lot on trying to encourage nurseries to not sell plants that are known to be invasive in wildlands. And they also have a number of substitutions on their website as well. So if somebody's asking you, what are some like various drought resistant plants that I can plant, you can offer some native options. PlantRight also has some different horticultural options that are not necessarily native, but they are also not invasive. So this is a great resource for folks as well. So some final thoughts. We would love your help tracking EDRR populations. CNPS chapters are really at the forefront of helping spot new invasive plants in the state. You're the ones with loads and loads of knowledge about plants. You're the ones who are out there constantly looking at things and noticing new things. So CNPS members have been very instrumental in being eyes on the ground and really bringing things to the attention of, a larger community so people can start keeping an eye on species. WMAs can be really powerful coalitions to advocate for funding and resources in your local area. And CNPS, the different chapters have a history of moving WMAs along and really helping to set priorities in regions. There are a number of resources available to help identify and manage invasive plants in our home and garden settings or in wildlands. We've gone through some of them, but there are many more on our website and many more available, in the state at large as well. And again, I encourage you to come to the symposium and the workshops. Those are great places to learn more and meet other people. And if you are talking to a member of the public and you think that they can benefit from some Cal IPC information, feel free to send them our way. We have a general inquiries line at info@calipc.org. Just let them know make sure to tell us that they were sent by CNPS so we don't accidentally send them right back to you. And with that, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. Really appreciate your time and attention. And I think if there are questions in the chat that haven't been answered yet or that we want to address live, then yeah, we can go ahead and do that. But thank you all so much for coming.
Hey, that was wonderful and amazing. I mean, I had no idea the depth of resources available. But of course, you all know none of us are going to be able to sleep tonight after that. PDRR. In fact, I'm going to go out and start looking right now for those species. It's like, wow, it is kind of overwhelming often when we're out there and we're like, where do you begin? But you've given us some inspiration. So thank you for that.
And it's fun, actually. It's like a scavenger hunt, too, to look for a species. I mean, for one, it's a badge of honor and pride if you find a new species, even though it's bad, a new invasive species in an area. And it really hones your botanical skills to to see, oh, this either with INAT or with CalFlora, you know, oh, this is right here. Well, let me go and see what it looks like. And maybe you didn't find it. And if you didn't find it, maybe if you feel comfortable enough with the tools, you can record that you didn't find it, because that's really important. Absence data is, or you did find it, and now you know you got not just a picture that you're going at, you actually have the thing that you looked at, and it's, you know, burned in your brain for the future.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that. And I know I saw a question in here by Mike Vandeman, wondering about prevention. Is there any like higher level prevention going on that we don't know about? Because it's super frustrating knowing, you know, we're already dealing with so many, and you know, we got 96 invasive species here in San Francisco County alone. And when more are introduced, you just want to like slap somebody. No, I'm only kidding. But it's like, you know what? There's got to be a way to stop this somehow. It seems like, is it primarily the horticultural industry that is to blame, or is it just like,
I think
all this getting here?
do you want to say something, or
Oh, go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, I think there's, I mean, everything, it's a perfect storm, because we got a lot of people, they're moving a lot. There's a lot of stuff being like infrastructure, like the movement of gravel and materials, and, you know, plant materials, soil, gravel, all fill. Oh my gosh, those things are like entire populations are moved to locations. And so there's no genetic bottleneck there. So that's one thing. It's just the increasing pace of that. And then, I mean, you all know where it's all coming from. It is also, to a degree, it is also coming from horticulture. And Constance mentioned the one organization that, I mean, we work with them at Plant Right. They give, you know, they are going to next year, they are definitely going to be doing another nursery survey, and they use master gardeners, volunteers for that. And so, you know, we can, if you guys are interested, we can, you know, like you can email us and we can collect your names for when that comes due next year. But it's very helpful at identifying, like, okay, everybody knows fountain grass is bad, and everybody knows the nursery shouldn't be selling fountain grass, but are there still nurseries selling fountain grass? Things like that. That is what this nursery survey does. It's not regulatory. This is another, you know, nonprofit directive, but it helps the regulatory agents. It helps provide that proof that then CDFA, you know, okay, maybe you need to do something here. So we don't have, you know, there's not a lot of enforcement going on, or not really any, for like A-rated weeds and things like that. So I think very good thing is to write your representative, your state legislature, representative, and really support. I mean, Doug is amazing. I don't know how he does it. He has endless energy to be slogging over to Sacramento and fighting the good fight out there. So, you know, there is a fair amount of advocacy being done on Cal IPC's front to keep. It's not so much like, oh, directly like that right now, but it's more keeping. We have to first get the foundation, which is invasive plants are a problem, and that is already a big sell in a state where there's just so many other things going on, but especially with our wildfires and increasing, and our diversity crisis, that it's an easier sell maybe than it was 20 years ago. So
controlling is so expensive. I think that now our legislators are realizing that it does make a lot more sense to address it up front.
Yeah.
And so if that can also be relayed to the horticultural industry, it can save a lot, a lot of effort in the future.
Yeah, and knowing about it. I think there was just I heard from Doug, there's a sea poppy that's a new plant that's coming out on the coast in the Ventura area, and apparently there's nurseries selling it, you know. So, but that's good. It's an early detection species. now people have heard that a nursery is selling it. I mean, they're gonna, maybe there's no regulation, but they're gonna be shunned. They're gonna hear, that nursery is gonna hear from the agricultural. Actually, they might be getting some local enforcement.
I would say another point of entry is lack of site hygiene as well. So like when restoration crews are going out there, or even construction crews, putting in a new culvert or something like that, if they're not aware of what site hygiene is and how to do it, either on an industrial large scale or even on a personal scale, if we're like hiking around from place to place with mud on our boots and seeds on our pants, that can really spread things as well. So site hygiene is something that we didn't talk about today, but that is something that is a major spreader of weeds as well as soil pathogens.
Cool. Yeah, there's another question from Mike Vanderman about outreach to schools to spread the habitat restoration religion. Nice one, Mike.
We don't do too much of that as far as K through 12. What we have really been focused on is working with conservation corps around the state. So that's one of our big projects right now. It's generally, the crews are essentially youth ages 18 to 26. And we've been working with them to do more site hygiene education, to do more ecological, kind of foundational ecological concepts, training, invasive plant training. So that's really where a lot of our training is focused right now, on early career folks who are out there literally doing the work. So that's really where we're trying to prioritize our education.
Yeah. And we do hope that local chapters, such as yours, that's really the best place to do it, because kids are going to learn by getting their hands dirty and by being right there on site. We're behind a screen. This is us. This is what we are most of the time. So that doesn't come across that well to a kid, but doing a work party does. Yeah.
Well, we've tried working with the nurseries, but a few of them are receptive, but there's a lot of, let's face it, there's a lot of arrogance within the horticultural industry. So,
but getting back to the schools, we have worked with schools on education, and it's really fun to to work with students, and there may be a bigger initiative coming along in San Francisco on habitat restoration. So we're hopeful.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's slow. It's a slow ship to turn, as it were.
Yep.
But yeah, the work you all are doing is absolutely key. And go Doug.
Go Doug, exactly. And go Yerba Buena, because you guys are a model chapter. So we really appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we've got some we've got some stalwarts out there like Jake Sig and others, and the Natural Resources Division of the San Francisco Recreation and Parks Department. They're stellar. They have a really excellent crew. It's just we need like them to be 10 times bigger, but they're doing a great job of managing the 1,100 acres they've been provided to manage. But anyway, it's we're hopeful. We did hear about the Japanese knotweed though. I don't know. Hopefully that's being focused on. A lot of times these things are happening more in like private lands though, and then
it is a challenge. I looked online and I saw that Peter Brastow visited the population at the Presidio last year. So he put a record in, an iNaturalist record, and that was ported over into Cal Flora. So that's good. I don't know what the management status. It would be good to find out what the management status is, because it seems like there's it's sort of scattered along a creek a little bit.
Okay, well, that at least the National Park Service, they've got some pretty good resources out there for managing.
And they are the ones that detected it, I think, first.
Yeah. Right on. Well, I'm not seeing any other. Let's see. Is there any other questions in here? Nope. I think you guys have filled our heads with lots of info
I think I do see one more. It's we do have ID flashcards, but someone would like to have a flyer or card that they could leave at a house, say with pampas grass growing in their yard. Is there anything like that? The closest thing that we would have is that species ID card. There are some different like don't plant a pest brochures that are available for as a PDF download, so you could print it out. And so that is available on the website as well.
Oh, cool. Excellent. Good to know. Well, thank you all so much for being with us tonight. It was really, there may be something else. Oh, Mike says Washington State requires property owners to remove invasives, except likely those they have given up on. Yeah, well, you know, they're ahead of the game then, I'd say, up there in Washington State. But
They have really a well-coordinated system up there.
yeah, California's going to catch up though.
Yeah, we're
We can
leading
do
in a
it.
lot of things, so we should be
Yeah.
leading those.
Well, thank you all so much for presenting to us tonight, and it was really fascinating and some great information.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
us. This was
Yeah.
great.
Ah,
Thank you.
we'll see you. We'll see you out there in the next weeding event, maybe.
Sounds good. All right.
Thanks everybody for being
Everybody.
here.
Thank you.
See you next week, we
Bye.
hope.